Yep. So, all right, yeah. So I've got several templates for Corona, as many folks know. I've got, I believe it's now 14 game templates and six tools or mechanics templates. So what I was going to do today, hopefully to add a little extra to the 2.0 discussion, was talk a little bit about Gear Jumper, which is a customer some time ago asked me to do a clone of Jump-A-Clock, which is the image I have on the right here. And Jump-A-Clock is basically, it's a vertical scroller game. What you're seeing here, it looks like is a two-player version of the game. So I suppose I should. Oh goodness, this is me trying to drive my desktop. All right, let's just go back to that. Ignore the image on the right. On the left side here, what you've got is a character who is standing on a gear, and the way you play this game is basically jump from gear to gear, and the camera follows you, and you pick up the bolts, and you avoid traps and things like that. And your goal is to get to the top of the screen. So I whipped together a example, or that is a template based on the same mechanics. And I don't want to go too far talking about this, but what I was going to talk about today is how this is put together, and then I was going to demonstrate some. I was hoping that Walter would ask if it was 2.0 compatible, which it of course is, and then I was going to demonstrate a few little 2.0 features I threw in there just for fun. So you still typing away there, Charles?
I am. Yeah, I sent him a text.
Okay,
I sent him a text message.
I'm going to launch, and we can stop at any point. So.
Okay.
So as all my templates are, this template is designed in a modular fashion. So when I say modules, what I'm referring to is some time ago there was a wonderful article. Let me find it here. There was a wonderful blog post, actually, or tutorial on the Corona Labs site, and I'll post a link so Charles can link it later. And there may be a more recent one. I feel like there should be another tutorial out there that extends this discussion, but the premise is still the same. People who write games in Corona start off putting all of their code in main, and then eventually find that having all their code in one place is too much as far as keeping it organized and just working with it. So then they start to explore modules. And in Lua and Corona, a module is nothing more than a separate file where you keep some of your code, and then you find a way to expose that code so that it can be called from different locations. So I put together a little example of that just to clarify. Let me bring that up just so it makes sense when I talk about my template. So what I've done here is I've written two different modules, and I have a main file. And in my main file, in the first example, I call require, and then I load in module A. And module A is basically this code here. And in this code, what I've got is a local variable and two local functions. I've got a function to change this color, which is a table. And I've got another function which is called doIt, which is its whole job is to draw a circle on the screen at an X and Y position. Then to turn this code into a module, all I do is I create a table, and then I attach to that table using fields the function doIt and the function setColor. And in my module, I could call this anything I want. I could call this drawIt or change color. And then externally, over here, I would then call this drawIt. And let's see, change color. So, but I'm going to go back to the original spellings. So if I were to run this code, I'm already running it on the left side of my screen. It draws a circle. Just to demonstrate what the setColor does, I can change this to run example 2. And example 2 does the same thing. It loads the module, it requires the file, which then returns this table and stores it in module test. And then I call module test change color and module test doIt. So I run this, and if I've done this correctly or saved my file, this should turn yellow. Or I should get that. It never fails. Okay, what have I done? Sorry. Pretend you didn't see this.
It's the infamous typo.
It never fails. You know, you do these demos right before the show, everything works great.
Hmm.
And then you say, well, if I did this, and then you mess up your example. Oh, you're a stinker. Well, we're just going to skip over that. Okay, so pretend you saw oh, hex.
A rabbit and a hat.
Oh, okay, I see what I did. There we go. Oh, you stinker. Okay, Charles, say something witty.
Okay. Does anybody else on the panel want to troubleshoot?
Yeah, the down there at the bottom you have public.change color still instead of set color.
See, I must have changed. There we go. Okay, back. Don't. Here's a rule for people who are trying to do a demo. Don't change your code in the middle. Otherwise, people will think you're a total idiot. Okay, so it did what it was supposed to do. I called this, and it changed the local variable in this module to 255.255.0, which is the encoding for yellow. So the beauty of modular coding, and this is not modular coding in the sense of C++ or some other object-oriented language, but using modules is, if you do it right, your modules can be interchangeable. So, which is sort of the description of modular coding. So I'm probably confusing some folks out there, but what I've done as an example is I've just taken and created another module that has the same functions but does something a little different. This one instead makes a rectangle. So if I save my change to main, which now runs example 3, which is this here, and I run it, I should get a cyan-colored square. I made it a square. So how does this relate to my code? So if we go back, and we go back to the gear jumper example, what I've done is, first of all, when you get my templates, I almost invariably will give you more than one version. I'll give you what I call a pure version, which is written in pure Corona and Lua. It doesn't have any extra libraries written by me. And then there'll often be an SSK version, which uses, if you watched a prior show of ours here a couple times back, or Charles's show, sorry, is...
It's not my show.
Taking over. Yeah, I'm taking over. I'm taking partial ownership here.
No, it's not my show. It's the community show.
That's right. Uses the Super Starter Kit, which is that free library of functions and modules that I provide on GitHub. So if we look at the basic version, you'll see that I have modules for a camera, filters, which is the collision filters, a level builder, a math library, a module for the player, interfaces module, and then sounds module and world module, which is its job is to put together the entire level. So the level module loads the level details, and the world controls everything. So, and similarly, so if you play this game, let's try to play this game without killing myself. I'll reload it. Your whole goal is just to get to the top of the screen. And the way this example works is it's got a camera that lags behind. So when your player is moving around in a circle, let me make this a little bigger. Yeah, bigger.
Perfect.
There we go. Should be able to see that. So as you can see, when I jump, the camera doesn't move until I land on a gear. Right? But if I wanted to, I could swap out the module, which is the camera module right here. It's a short piece of code. Another thing I should say is I try to comment the heck out of these templates so that people can understand what's going on and why I've made a decision, a certain kind of decision. And I won't go through all this code, but basically the way the camera works is it's constantly keeping track of the character's position, but until it's told to do an update, it doesn't actually change the position of the screen. However, as soon as the player jumps and lands, the player code will call the camera module update function, and it will then execute a transition to move the scene, which is what we see. We see that nice smooth If I land on a gear, we see that slight, let's land on a further gear here. So the screen moves up in a nice, smooth fashion.
So
Originally, I started off with a different camera. So let me go into main where I load up the module, and I'll load up module 2, camera module 2. And this is a direct tracking module, which is really ugly when you use it. So this one's constantly keeping track of the position of the character and updating. Yeah, this is starting to make me feel a little bit sick. So anyways, you get the idea. Just by changing one line of code and then writing a separate module, I was able to replace the functionality in my game, which is the whole idea here.
So at this point, you've switched the cameras, and it's actually what? It's following the ball?
So right now, the camera is keeping track of the Y position continuously.
Ugh.
That looks even worse on the Google Hangout, because it doesn't track every frame.
Right.
Trust me, it's a lot smoother over on this end, but it's still making me ill. So let's stop doing that.
Okay, so
yeah, that's
now
better.
I have a question for you. So are you saying that is the gameplay area I know with Corona, I'm just going to get all these questions all in one sentence.
Sure.
In Corona, it clips. So whatever's not on the canvas or on the viewable area rather is clipped. So is this
right.
Is this all these gears, this gameplay surface, is this already pre-generated and we're just panning across?
Yeah. So that's the way this particular template works. Is it you lay out how your level is supposed to be put together. Actually, the levels in this template are randomly generated.
Okay.
So if I were to fall off the screen here and play again, I'd get a new level. But also, every time I load it, I use the same seed to start, so it starts off with the same level layout. So I reload it, and it comes up the same. But to answer your question, yes, the entire level is rendered. It's drawn to the buffer of the screen, however you want to think of it. But then everything that's off screen is clipped. And the way the camera works is it's a little bit much to go into cameras on this we could do a whole show on cameras. But the basic premise behind a camera is you use display groups to put your content in, and then if you want to move the content so you can see different content, you move the group. So what's happening is when I move the player, he jumps up, his Y position changed in his group. And the camera algorithm says, oh, he was at position 100, now he's at position 80 because it goes negatively when it goes up the screen. So what I'll do is I will update the position of the group by plus 20 pixels, which slides it back down the screen, and now he's back in the center of the screen. You notice how it's kind of hard to see because the level is moving, but you'll see that he never changes his orientation with regards to the like this require statement over here, which is like the middle of the screen.
So he's always
temporarily higher. So he's temporarily higher on the scene because I'm using a transition, so it lags behind on the update. So if I'm a real fast jumper, which I'm just not in this demo, I might be able to get ahead of it. So let's try to fall off. Let's do this instead. Oh.
Okay, I have a question.
Certainly.
So does the player generate an event that says, "Hey, my Y position has changed," or are you actually polling it every X times and looking to see if it's changed?
So the way I did it is I have a function in the player module that gets called when you collide with a gear. So you jump, and he is unmounted from the gear. When it's sitting here like this, it's mounted onto the gear. But when I click on the screen, it removes the joint that it's using to mount onto this gear, and then I apply an impulse to the player object. Then when it collides with another gear, it creates another mount joint, so it's mounted to this new gear, and at the same time, well, that's what this function does, is the mount to gear. So it says camera module do an update, And as soon as that is called, we go into the camera module down here. And the module will check to see if the player is moving and some other things, and then it will call a transition to update the background and the content area. Did that answer your question? So I'm not calling an event. The event is actually being triggered by a collision event.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So if you do fall off the screen, then the camera doesn't update until it hits a gear at some point?
Right. Like if I just fall off the bottom of the screen like that, you'll never get a collision event. But this red area here, if I were to turn on the physics debug mode, you'd see that there is a body here. So It's actually something that it can collide with, and this is a death area. So once you collide with that, it tells the logic in the game, you fell off the screen, and then it gives you a few seconds, and it resets the level. Does that answer your question?
Yep, very cool.
So is Walter coming, or should I jump right into special effects?
Well, I think until he gets here, I think we should just continue talking about the template and the different aspects of it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll just give a quick. The problem with this template is it's a lot of fun, but it's way too huge to talk about in a few minutes. The key point I wanted to make is that all the code is separated into modules that you can experiment with individually. Now, certainly some of the modules are aware of other modules. For example, the player module is aware of the camera because it needs to tell it to do an update when we mount the player to a new gear. But for the most part, these modules are standalone, and so you can play around with them without too much fear of breaking some other functionality in some other part of the game. Let's see. Did I do another example of a module here? I guess it's important is if you're new to Corona, one of the things you're going to be struggling with is understanding how the physics system works. And so I spent some time in this particular template for sure, telling you where I got my information for how to set up the collisions. So there's a great tutorial out there. I think this was, you could just look. I'm not going to look. And then I went, if I do that, something else will malfunction. This is how you get yourself messed up. I think I'll look, and there my screen crashes or I drop off the thing. So anyway, there's a wonderful article out here about calculating collisions. And then I followed the steps in the article for this tutorial, or for this template, and then showed you all my results and then the final product, which is what you get here. I used a different random generator than what is available directly. So Corona comes with its own random number generator, but I wanted something a little bit different, so I picked one up off of the Corona code sharing area and integrated that with this particular template. I guess I'm gonna, I'm getting bored listening to myself, so I'm just gonna go directly into how much I love Graphics 2.0.
Yeah, go ahead. Walter just replied and said he's still stuck in the meeting. He's going to be about 10 more minutes, and
okay.
That's funny though.
So the question that I was hoping that Walter would ask me is your template compatible with 2.0?
Hey Ed.
And I'd say, well,
hey Ed, is your template compatible with 2.0?
Yes and no.
I'll channel for him.
Okay. Yes, it is, because Walter, or whoever decided this, came up with a compatibility mode. So one of the big things that people are going to run into when they go over to Corona, Graphics 2.0 that is if you're familiar with the way objects are positioned, you'll know that there's a thing called a reference point. So a reference point describes where on the screen the center, or not the center, but let's say I'm positioning a square, and I say square x is 10, square y is 10. So what does that mean? Does that mean the upper left corner of the square, the middle of the square, the lower right corner, etc.? So the reference point system in Corona lets us tell that square or that object where its reference point is regarding positioning. So if I wanted to position an object using the upper left corner, I would just tell it to use an upper left corner reference point. And from then on, if I changed the X and Y positions, it would all be relative to the upper left corner. So the problem is that in Graphics 2.0, to support 2.5D, and I'll let Walter go into this more if he wants to, but to support 2.5D, they need a little bit more of an elaborate system for reference points, or the concept of a reference point, and they call that an anchor point. So I'm not going to talk more about anchor points, but I will say that if you're using reference points are not supported in 2.0 full mode. But in the backwards compatible graphics version 1 mode, it will enable the old style reference points. So long story short, to make my templates work, all you got to do is go into the config file and set one line of code, which is graphics. Let me make this bigger so you can read it. Graphics compatibility equals 1, and then you're good to go. And just to prove it, this is in fact the Graphics 2.0, the new screen that you get when you're running it. It doesn't look anything like the old one, which is this one. This is Graphics 1.0. So you know you're in the app when it's all white, or when I do that. So what kind of cool things can we do with Graphics 2.0?
Just for a moment there, I think that there was another kind of issue there with reference points. It seemed like there was always inconsistencies between different types of objects. There were display objects and then text objects and blah blah blahs, and then it was always like, well, is this in the center point? Is it the center? Is it the upper left hand corner? It was always very confusing.
So text objects default to the upper left, and they stay upper left after you create them. So if you create a rectangle or an image, and you position it using the, you can do an image rect and pass in an X and Y to tell it where to position it. It will position it by the upper left. But after that, you try to change the position, it's by the center reference point. So there's this like little ambiguity. Is it the upper left or the center? Well, it's the upper left when you create it, but after that, it's the center. And text objects are still the upper left.
Right. So now the opportunity comes along, when you're redoing the engine now to introduce a more consistent way of doing things, and that's where anchor points kind of come in as well. I think
I do believe it's center, always center now.
Yeah. Right. So that's I think that's going to be better.
The sad thing is I got my hands on this Graphics 2.0 and was too busy this weekend to really get in there. I was so excited to play with it, but no chance. So, but I'm going to demonstrate one little feature that I played with. So I took and I modified one of the modules, which is the module that draws these backgrounds, and I just started playing with some of the filtering effects, which I thought were pretty cool. So some of my favorite ones are, you can see I've tried out 10 different ones. Polka dots, I kind of like that one a little bit. Just kind of goofy. Reload it. Did I choose the right one? I did not. It helps if you type your code in the right place. There we go. Polka dots. Just wonky. Can you kind of see that? You can kind of see
it almost looks like a grid. Like a mesh.
It does kind of. It's supposed to be a grid of dots. So I did a variation on that one, which was 4, I believe. So this is the smaller polka dots. So that's not too exciting. I shouldn't say that. I'm not using it the right way. I just kind of just threw it in there. But some of these look really cool. Like I like Crystallize. That was pretty cool. That's probably my favorite one so far. So what it's done here is it's applied this filtering effect to those graphics that I had in the background. If I go back to the original, all these little bits and pieces that I've got rendered as the background, and then it does a crystallizing. I don't know if people out there use. I use Paint Shop, but most folks use Photoshop. But there's filters to do this kind of thing, and it's. The cool part about this is if you want to play with it a little bit, you can get a whole bunch of different effects.
You can combine effects.
And you can combine effects. Yeah. So here I made the crystallization a little bit larger as far as how it chooses to do the shape. And then, let's see, another one I liked was frosted glass. That was kind of cool. Sort of like your shower. If you got one of those glass shower, sliding shower stalls.
I have a real quick question to interrupt you real quick.
Sure, yeah.
Can you do a transition on the properties of an effect?
Oh man, I got all set to do a demo of that today, and I crashed it. So we need
So
to
you're
ask
on the case.
Yeah, I already erased the code, but I was like, wow, this would be really cool if it changed over time.
Yeah.
So I tried it, and it crashed, and I'm like, well, that's totally uncool. So why did that crash?
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing to keep in mind, since we're talking about that, is that this is the public beta, right?
Yeah.
So while it's out there available for people to download and play with, it's still an object in motion. So
Yeah.
but yeah,
Let's type this code in and see what it does. Maybe I did something wrong. So let's change the scale. So let's start at 1.
So it's worth.
Go ahead, talk.
Oh, it's worth pointing out that previously you would have had to do these things as rendered graphics, right? You would have created the graphics and put them in the background as images, right?
Yeah, you would have to do. You would have had to everything would have had to been a separate image. You would have had to pre-render all your images and done it all in Paint Photoshop for you people who have money.
But here
at least I'm not using GIMP. I'm not saying GIMP's bad. I'm just saying it's not Photoshop.
Sure. But here you're able to render these things kind of on the fly, so to speak, and
that's kind of nice.
I mean,
I like that.
at the very least, I could replace it the next frame with a different effect filter if I need to. My hope is it can be dynamic though. Yeah. I'm hoping Walter will come on the show and say, "Yep, we're going to make that dynamic." You can change that.
Is there any way? Have you tried? There's no like pixel point. You can't change pixels, right? Like there's no pixel precision. You can't draw pixels.
Well, you're talking to a guy who's gotten to play for this with this full 35 minutes this morning when he tried to real quick.
What about did you get a chance to try the tinting?
Say again, please.
Did you get a chance to try any of the tinting features, like tint?
No. I got.
Those seem exciting too.
I mean, yeah, they're all exciting. It took me a little longer than I expected because if you've looked at the documentation, they give some examples, but they didn't have I didn't see an example of modifying the parameters, so I was kind of like, where do I do that? So, I mean, it's pretty straightforward now that I see it, but it wasn't clear, so. And I wanted to make sure that everything was laid out. So what I'm going to try to do here, hopefully this doesn't crash, is a transition that waits 1 second and takes 2 seconds and goes from 1, where it started, to a scale of 64, and maybe that'll work. Hopefully. Oh, it works. Oh, that's sweet. Okay, you can't really see that, so I'm going to do that on Crystallize instead. Crystallize will be really clear. Okay, so I tried to do it originally with a runtime enter frame event, and that did not work. So where I was assigning a direct value to it. So let's do a scale from 2 to 64 and do an effect 5, which is the crystallize. And then there's one more I wanted to see, which was really cool. Okay, that was a bit fast.
Nice.
You get the idea, right?
Yeah.
So let's make that slower.
That is really cool.
Dunk, 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 dunk. Awesomeness. That is total awesome cakes.
That is. You can do like nice distance blur effects and stuff with that.
Especially when it gets into the higher values. I like that. It's, okay, so the one that I liked the most was Swirl, which is, let me put it on there. Let me show you the original Swirl. 10. So Swirl is nothing more than this radial modification to a texture where it sort of like took my original textures and swirled them around, right? So then let's start this out at 0 and go up to 1 over 12 seconds, starting 1 second after I load it. Did I not run it? Some tiles. Oh, it helps if you use the right thing. All right, let's try that again. Oh,
nice.
Yeah.
It's like a little watery effect. I love it.
Yes. See? That's awesome. So the answer
That's
to your
great.
question is yes. If
That's
you know what you're
great.
doing.
That's great.
Sweetness.